Hi guys. So I'm doing Thinking Man's Thursday, but I'm currently working on a longer form scripted video, which I didn't intend to be a series, but I don't think I can fill that much air. And one of the things I want to talk about is one of the things I've talked about before, is how we find fulfillment in work, and how we should always seek for our limits and occasionally accept them, but also didn't think I'd forget, did you? We should also be prepared and willing to attempt to go beyond them. So let me just adjust that, and yeah, you can kind of see the salt in my ginger today. So them little light flecks, yeah, it's gray hair, hard earned. But just because you find a limit doesn't mean you need to accept it. It means that it's something for you to push against. And sometimes it pushes back and you discover, okay, I can't do that. And you accept it and you move on. But occasionally you should revisit that particular limit and check and see if you haven't grown to the point where you can not only push that envelope, but tear it in half. And in building this idea, and I've talked about the idea of the hunter, husband, and sage in the past, and that's actually what I'm doing. I'm doing a little more of a deep dive into my concepts of it. I'm calling it Ardent's archetypes, or archetypes. Sorry, I newfied that a little bit. But this video is going to be talking about pushing your boundaries and why it's a good thing to occasionally accept them, move on, and then revisit them. As we go through life, we're going to find there are things when we're younger that we can't do, either through lack of experience, lack of training, lack of opportunity, lack of funding for that opportunity. Who knows? Any number of possibilities there. But at some point, you have to revisit those limits. Now, some limits are going to be hard limits. For example, I'll never be able to jump 5 feet in the air and dunk a basketball. I'm only 5'8", and I weigh around 300 pounds. My fat ass is just not getting up there. And Stormy, yes, I know you argue with me about my weight. We haven't weighed me lately, so eventually we'll see. But yeah, 300 is still a fair baseline as far as I'm concerned. But as I'm getting older, I realize that there are more and more things that when I look back, I've kind of gotten the feeling that I may have given up on them either a little too easily or a little too soon. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm working on a scripted, longer form video. And part of the reason for that is because I have tried to do scripted videos in the past, since I started this YouTube channel. And I've found that generally I end up going off script fairly often. And I find that talking just off the cuff, from my heart, is how I prefer to do things. Because I like you guys to see the sincerity in my face, and occasionally to see the thought process that I go through. Sometimes registered very clearly in my expression. But there are other times when, and especially having done the Driftwood People Stories for Cass, the last chapter of Yala came out yesterday. If you haven't seen it, please go and look at it. Please go and listen to it, rather. I think it's some of my best work so far. I've gotten great feedback from everyone who's heard it. Cass himself is extremely pleased with how I did the Chicken Killer's voice, and I am as well. I'm very proud of how I did that. And I really do want it to be shared because I think it's something, because it's new in the pop culture space. And that's part of the cause, or the, oh goodness, the purpose of, there's a French term that I couldn't quite think of, but the purpose, the raison d'etre. Of course I think of it when I'm moving past it. But the raison d'etre of my channel is partly to bring to light new talent. You know, that was inspired by Razor Fist. So I owe that man a great debt for giving me an idea of where I can create content and where I can get a good message out about how we fight the woke bullshit by ignoring the woke bullshit, at least partly, moving past it, and creating new stuff. Now, granted, there's nothing to stop the wokies from eventually infiltrating and infesting that stuff. But if we can make a model showing, not only that it's not the end just because someone perverted the things that we loved. Kathleen Kennedy in Star Wars, I will never forgive you. But we have to move past it. And we have to move on. We have to create new stuff. Not just because the stuff that we loved is now perverted and we don't enjoy it the same way anymore, but because to not create new things is stagnation, and a stagnant people is a dying people. Whatever term you want to use, people, society, civilization, whatever. But we need to continue creating common myths, common cultural experiences for each other. And that's part of the reason I do what I do. Now, just to return to the actual purpose of this particular video, talking about pushing limits, revisiting limits you've pushed in the past. One of the things I've found, especially having sat down now this morning and actually applying myself to the task of writing a script for a piece, I'm revisiting, or returning, I guess, in a sense, to the spirit of my youth a little bit. I was very much a scholarly kid. Now, of course, with the rise of cell phones and mobile tech, a lot of people don't read the way they used to, which means a lot of people don't write the way they used to. And having returned to doing something fairly scholarly with this article, I'm trying my best anyway, I'm finding that, in a sense, it's like finding a part of me that I had forgotten existed. And having rediscovered it, I'm very, very leery about letting it go again. So I'm probably going to end up doing a lot more writing. I did intend to spend a significant amount of time this winter writing. However, having gotten into a new relationship, that's eaten up a fair bit of my time. Now Stormy and myself are coming to the position where we're beginning to fall into that comfortable couple area. The honeymoon phase, the puppy love phase is kind of coming to a close. And we've become very comfortable with each other. We've begun to build routines with each other. And, well, for one thing, that's wonderful. But it's also freeing me up now to have my mind open to work on new things, rather than continue the constant status quo. So one of the things I am planning, because the next Driftwood story is the last one that I have available from Cass. I don't know that he's written more stuff. I will be talking to him tomorrow afternoon. So if you guys want me to pressure him to write more, let me know. Pressure him to write more if you're on his Facebook. It's good stuff. He should work on it. But I will be asking him tomorrow if there is any more Driftwood material, because it is very good stuff, and I think it deserves a far wider audience, which is part of the reason I'm looking at putting it up on Spotify. It's going to be a bit of a process. I'm not rushing it by any means. But Or potentially even publishing it as an album of spoken stories. Who knows? But one of the things that I really love is that I've revisited a limit that I once allowed myself to set, where I didn't believe that I could do good work scripting videos. I've come to the realization that I can. And that opens up, again, a whole nother area of creative endeavor, let's call it. And I do apologize, I'm a little scatterbrained at the moment. I haven't had a coffee in a while. I've been working and only realized in the last 20 minutes or so how much time I've actually let slide past and how close I'm getting to deadline for my video today. For fuck's sakes, Friday is already in the can. So that at least is done, and I'm free now for the next 18 hours or so before other things take precedent to work on this project, this archetype project. But just to revisit what I was saying about limits, in the same way that we get that sense of fulfillment from an achievement of our skill, our trade, whatever, in that same way, we can get that same sense of fulfillment from working out a new skill, from exercising old skills that we had allowed to lapse or to atrophy, or to come close to atrophication anyway. And it's an extremely pleasant sensation. And for someone who's suffered from anhedonia in the past due to substance abuse issues, being able to take joy in something again is beyond fulfilling. It's beyond a reward. It's almost indescribable. I've been kind of clumsily describing it, of course. But if there's one thought I would leave you guys with, it's this. Just because something today is something you can't do, that doesn't mean you won't be able to do it tomorrow. So don't ever give up forever. It's fine to put things on a shelf and revisit them later. One of my favorite examples of that is, ironically, Stephen King, who's become a bit of a, well, we'll leave that alone in the last few years. But if you've ever read the Dark Tower series, and ignoring the ending of that particular series, if you've ever read the first book and read the afterword about the explanation of the origin of the book, it began with a single line. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. King says he wrote that line 25 years before he started work on the book. A single sentence spawned 7, 8, 9 books, and a movie, eventually. Not a great movie, but it was half decent. I did like the gunplay. I won't lie. Magic combined with gunplay, I'm kind of liking it. But the fact that that single line sat untouched for 25 years before King looked at it and went, I can do something else with that now. It really should tell you how, not necessarily persistence, but the willingness to accept momentary circumstance is not always a bad thing. So, that said, I hope you're all having good days. I hope you continue to have good days. And as always, rise and rise again until lambs become lions. Bye-bye.